My name is Marcus Hale, and if you were to meet me today, you might think my life was simple, maybe even peaceful. I live in a quiet town tucked in the rolling hills of Pennsylvania. On the outside, I am a 32-year-old mining engineer who built a steady career underground, guiding men through dark tunnels where coal dust sticks to your skin and the rumble of machines drowns out every thought. It is hard work, dangerous work, but it gave me something my childhood never did: independence, the ability to stand on my own 2 feet, and a home I could truly call mine. That home, a modest 2-story place on Willow Street, meant more to me than bricks and mortar. It was proof that I had risen above the shadows of my past. Every window that let in sunlight, every corner of the little backyard where I planted tomatoes, spoke to me of freedom. Freedom from the coldness I had grown up in, freedom from the voices that told me I would never be enough. I thought that by building a life for myself, I had escaped those voices forever. I was wrong. You see, my childhood was not one of warmth and laughter. My father, Victor Hale, was a man who carried resentment like armor. He had been hardened by his own disappointments, and instead of letting them go, he carved them into everyone around him, especially me. His words were never gentle, never encouraging. They were knives, sharp and cutting. "What have you ever done but grub in those dirty holes?" he would say, mocking my work even as it paid my bills and put food on my table. From the time I was a boy, I learned that silence was my only defense. If I stayed quiet, at least the blade of his words cut less deep. My mother, Elena, was softer in tone, but no less wounding. She had a smile that could fool outsiders, a velvet voice that could sound caring. But behind that voice was something worse than shouting: favoritism. She made it clear that I was never her pride. That role belonged to my younger brother, Adrian. Adrian, with his easy smile, his charm, his way of winning people over without ever working hard. To my mother, Adrian was golden. To me, he was a shadow I could never step out from under. I still remember the night at dinner when Adrian called me the family spare. Everyone laughed. My parents laughed as if it were the funniest joke in the world. I laughed too, or at least pretended to, but inside, something broke. That night I promised myself I would never again depend on their approval. For years, I lived with that promise. I buried myself in work, saving every dollar, building a future where their voices couldn't reach me. And for a while, it worked. When I met Sophia, everything seemed to finally change. She was the light I had never known. With her auburn hair catching the sun and her eyes shining like the night sky, she made me feel seen, valued, and loved. She laughed at my dry humor, believed in my work, and dreamed with me about the future. When she said yes to my proposal, I thought my life had finally taken a turn for the better. With Sophia, I had hope, and with my house, I had a safe place to start a new chapter. But shadows have a way of creeping back in, even when you think you've shut every door. It started with a phone call from my father. His voice was curt, as if he were commanding rather than asking. "Elena and I need to crash at your place. Plumbing disaster at home, it's a mess. Be ready this weekend." He didn't ask if it was convenient. He didn't ask if I was okay with it. He simply declared it, as if my life and home belonged to him. What unsettled me most wasn't the demand itself, but the fact that I had never given them my address. I had kept my house private, almost sacred, away from their judgment. How did they know where I lived? I wanted to say no, to set the boundary. I had never been able to before, but something heavier than my own will press down on me, the sense of duty that comes with being the eldest son. Against my better judgment, I said yes. They arrived under a gray sky, rain misting down, and from the moment Victor set foot on my porch, the air in my home felt heavier. He looked around with that familiar smirk and said, "Must have begged and borrowed for this, huh?" My mother followed, her smile as thin as paper. "Nice house, Marcus," she said, "but you really should have saved more instead of showing off." It didn't matter that I had worked years to buy it without a cent of help from them. Their words still stung like salt in an old wound. Adrian, of course, didn't miss the chance to treat my home like his playground. He began visiting often, lounging on my couch with his shoes up, flipping through channels, and barking orders at me. "Hey, bro, fetch me a soda, will you?" he'd say without even looking at me, eyes glued to the television. I swallowed my anger. It was easier than starting a fight I knew I'd lose. Through it all, Sophia tried to comfort me. She'd hug me tightly when she visited, whispering reassurance that I was stronger than their words. For a while, her presence was the only thing that made the situation bearable. But even then, I noticed moments, quick, almost hidden, when her smile faltered, when her eyes shifted uneasily as if something was weighing on her that she couldn't share. I told myself I was imagining it. I wanted so badly to believe she was my safe harbor. Then came the night that changed everything. I had installed security cameras around my house months earlier, a precaution for safety. One evening, when I checked them, I realized they were off. At first, I thought it was a technical glitch. But when I inspected the wires, I saw they had been deliberately cut. My stomach sank. Someone inside the house had done this. Fear and suspicion wrapped around me like chains. Quietly, without telling anyone, I repaired the cameras and set up a hidden backup that sent footage to a private cloud only I could access. I didn't know what I would find. Part of me didn't want to know. But the truth has a way of clawing itself into the light. Late one night, unable to sleep, I opened the footage. What I saw made my blood run cold. There they were, my father, my mother, Adrian, and Sophia, sitting around my coffee table, whispering as if the walls themselves were listening. I leaned closer to the screen, hardly breathing. My father's voice cut through the silence first. "He's not really one of us. He was adopted. He doesn't even know it. No blood of mine." I felt the ground tilt beneath me. Adopted. The word echoed in my chest like a gunshot. But before I could even process it, the scene grew worse. Adrian's arm was draped casually around Sophia, far too close, far too familiar. His voice was a dagger. "She's got him hooked. Soon the house and money are ours." Sophia didn't pull away. She smiled faintly, as if proud of her role in their scheme. My mother's voice joined in, praising Sophia for the sob story she had fed me about her father's medical bills. The story that had led me to hand over thousands of dollars without question. "You did well," she said softly, almost lovingly. Then came the final blow. Adrian leaned in, his voice a whisper that burned itself into my memory. "At the party, I'll slip antifreeze into his drink. No one will ever suspect." And Sophia, my Sophia, nodded silently. That nod cut deeper than any word ever could. I remember sitting there in the dim light of my living room, staring at the screen, my whole world crumbling. Everything I thought I knew, my family, my fiancé, my very identity, was a lie. Rage surged through me, so fierce I thought I might break apart. But beneath the rage was something else, clarity. If I let my emotions rule me, I would lose. I had to be smarter than them, calmer than them. I saved every bit of evidence, uploading it all to secure folders. And then I made a call that might have saved my life. I reached out to Elias, my lawyer and one of the few people I trusted. I showed him the footage. His face darkened as he watched, and when it ended, he looked at me with steady eyes. "We wait," he said. "Let them act, and we'll be ready." So I played my part. I smiled at Sophia as if I didn't know. The night of the party arrived with fog rolling low over the Pennsylvania hills, cloaking everything in a pale, uneasy silence. My home glowed from the inside, Candles flickered in the windows, and fresh daisies sat in vases on the tables, a gesture from Sophia that should have meant care, but now looked like a cruel disguise. The air smelled faintly of roasted chicken and baked bread, but underneath it all was the metallic tang of tension. I wore a calm smile, though inside, my heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. For weeks, I had rehearsed this moment in my mind. Every smile I wore, every nod I gave, every laugh I forced had been practice for tonight. My family thought I was still the naive Marcus who bent to their words, who carried their weight without complaint. They didn't know I had seen behind their masks. They didn't know the truth was sitting on a cloud drive, waiting for its moment. Victor poured red wine into glasses, his movements oddly deliberate. He raised his glass toward me, his eyes sharp as ever. "To your happiness, son," he said. The word, son, sounded more like an insult than a blessing. I lifted my own glass, pretending not to notice the faintly sweet, almost chemical smell that rose from the surface. I didn't drink. Instead, I swirled the liquid, smiling, acting the part of the grateful host. Around me, Adrian smirked, Sophia leaned against him just a fraction too comfortably, and my mother dabbed her lips with a napkin, her eyes watching me the way a hawk watches prey. I held the glass, waiting, my chest tight. Any moment now, then, like a thunderclap, a knock rattled the front door. Everyone froze. I set my glass down, walked over, and opened the door. Standing there was Elias, my lawyer, flanked by 2 uniformed police officers. His expression was steady, unflinching. "Evening, Marcus," he said calmly. Then, turning his gaze past me into the room, he spoke louder. "We have a warrant. Evidence of conspiracy." The room erupted. Adrian jumped to his feet, shouting, "What the hell is this?" Sophia's face drained of color. My mother gasped, clutching her chest, while my father narrowed his eyes, his jaw set like stone. Elias stepped inside, holding up a tablet. "We'll let the footage speak." And then it played. Their whispers, their laughter, their betrayal, every word spilled into the room like poison. My father's declaration that I wasn't his real son. My mother's pride in Sophia's lies. Adrian's plan to poison me. Sophia's silent nod. It all filled the space, undeniable, unescapable. The officers moved quickly. One tested the wine glass I had set aside. The results came back fast. Traces of antifreeze confirmed. Victor's mask cracked first. "This is a misunderstanding," he growled, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. My mother broke into sobs, insisting it was all a joke, just words not meant seriously. Adrian tried to laugh, his charm slipping. "Come on, man, you really think we'd hurt you? We were just messing around." And Sophia, she couldn't even look at me. Her head bowed, her eyes fixed on the floor, as if shame itself had frozen her in place. The police didn't wait for more excuses. Cuffs snapped onto wrists, rights were read aloud. My living room, my sanctuary, became a stage for justice. As they were led out, I stood still, my hands clenched, my body trembling not from fear but from the release of weeks of bottled rage. When the door finally shut behind them, silence filled the house. For the first time in a long time, it was my silence, not theirs. That night, I couldn't sleep. The shadows of betrayal clung to me, even though they were gone. So I packed a bag and drove through the fog, the winding roads carrying me to the only person who had ever truly been family, my Uncle Ted. Uncle Ted lived in a small riverside cabin, humble and quiet, but filled with something my childhood home had never known: warmth. As a boy, I had spent summers with him, fixing bikes, fishing by the river, and listening to his steady encouragement. When I walked through his door that night, carrying the weight of everything I had discovered, Ted didn't ask questions. He simply put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Sit down, kid. You look like you've carried the whole mountain on your back." The words broke me. For the first time since seeing that footage, I let the tears come. I told him everything, about the cameras, the adoption reveal, the poison, Sophia's betrayal. I expected him to be shocked, maybe even angry. But when I finished, he only sighed and poured us both a cup of tea. I always knew your father's bitterness ran deep, he said quietly. And yes, it's true. You were adopted. I never told you because it wasn't my place. But Marcus, listen to me, blood doesn't make family. Love does. And you've been my family since the day you were born. His words settled into me like balm on a wound. For the first time, I understood. I didn't need Victor's approval, Elena's affection, or Adrian's brotherhood. I had Uncle Ted. I had people in my life who cared, truly cared, without games or schemes. The weeks that followed were a blur of courtrooms, headlines, and whispers in town. The story spread quickly. Family betrayal in Willow Street, the newspapers called it. My family became infamous, not for their achievements, but for their greed. In court, the evidence was overwhelming. The footage, the poisoned wine, the bank records of the money Sophia had tricked me into giving her, it all painted a clear picture. My father tried to blame debts, my mother painted herself as a victim, Adrian claimed it was all a joke gone too far, and Sophia refused to speak at all. Their words didn't matter. The jury saw through them, the sentences were harsh but fair. Conspiracy, attempted poisoning, fraud, each crime carried weight. As they were led away, I felt no joy, no triumph. Only closure. After the trial, I returned to my house. At first, every corner reminded me of their betrayal, the couch where they had plotted, the table where they had whispered. But slowly, I began to reclaim it. I painted the walls new colors, bright ones that welcomed light. I replaced the old furniture with pieces that felt like me. I tore out the daisies and planted lavender instead, a reminder of peace and renewal. At the mines, my co-workers treated me differently. Not with pity, but with respect. They knew what I had been through, and their quiet nods, their small acts of kindness, helped me heal. On weekends, I spent time with Uncle Ted, fishing or just talking by the river. And slowly, I began to open my life to new friendships, neighbors, hikers, people who knew me not as the Hale son, but as Marcus. Just Marcus. I didn't rush into another relationship. The wound Sophia left was too deep for that. But over time, I learned something more important than romance. I learned how to be whole on my own. Looking back now, I see the lessons clearly. Family isn't about blood. My father, mother, and brother shared my blood, but they never truly shared my heart. Uncle Ted, though not bound to me by birth, gave me the love and loyalty that made him my true family. I learned that greed can rot even the closest bonds, turning love into weapons. I learned that trust should never be blind, that it must be earned, protected, and never taken for granted. Most of all, I learned that betrayal, as painful as it is, can be a doorway to strength. In losing the people I thought were my foundation, I discovered that I could stand taller than I ever imagined. Now, when the morning sun pours through my windows, I don't see shadows anymore. I see resilience. I see freedom. And I see a future not chained by the past, but built on the courage to let go of what tried to destroy me. Because in the end, the true danger wasn't in the depths of the coal mines where I worked, it was in the hearts of those closest to me. And by facing that danger, I found something far more valuable than gold or coal. I found myself.